I'd love for you to share with our audience, who may be very familiar and some not as familiar with your work, about how you began your journey of systematically and consistently listening to your life.
I think it began out of need, and the need was generated by pain, if I can put it simply. That is, my Berkeley years, most people look at Berkeley in the 60s as a very exciting place full of life and energy, and it was. And I benefited from a lot of that. I didn't participate in the shadow side of life in Berkeley in those days, but I certainly developed a sense of community and a sense of political possibility and a sense of energy around that. But I spent a lot of those years miserable because why? I wasn't sure. I was the first person in my family to go to college, so maybe it was intimidation about being in a high-powered academic setting. I was in a big, highly competitive crowd, and I was miserable. I ran scared most of the time. I didn't know why, and so out of this pain of feeling somehow externally incongruent with my own inner life, and I couldn't have named it that way at the time, but I think that's what it was. This sense of personal dislocation, of being one person on the outside, another person on the inside. This sense of what I came later in my writing to call the divided life.
Mm-hmm.
It was the pain of the divided life, a pain that many, many people can resonate with, I think, that finally drove me to try to listen more deeply to what was going on inside of me. And I have to add this dimension, eventually to come to understand that we have many voices inside of us. We have not only a voice of true leading and calling and authenticity and spiritual grounding, we also have a voice of greed and a voice of envy and a voice of anger. And, we're like a big, complicated city in there. And it's no easier to find your way around that city and figure out who to listen to
Mm-hmm.
than it is to find your way around New York City at rush hour when you're trying to get somewhere that they don't want you to get to. It's complicated business. And so the question not only of how do I listen to my inner truth, but how do I discern that voice from all the other voices in there became very paramount for me. And during the 5 years I spent as a community organizer, I learned that lesson big time. I mean, community organizing is tough work, and you're subjected to all kinds of power plays and political pressures and conflicting interests and intense arguments and sometimes physical dangers that just come with the territory. Learning to sort my way through all of that and not sort of bend with each blow of the wind or each body blow was really tough work. And at the end of 5 years, I realized that I really needed a break from this work, which is why I went to spend what my family and I thought would be a 1-year sabbatical from my work as a community organizer at a Quaker center near Philadelphia called Pendle Hill, which stands still today, has been there since 1930, is a long-term Quaker experiment in living, learning community where 80 people, when I was there, lived a daily round of life together that involved worship and eating meals and doing physical work and taking care of the buildings and grounds and studying nonviolent social change as well as different dimensions of spiritual traditions and reaching out in acts of nonviolence to the larger world. I had planned to just spend a year there, but Quakerism's way of honoring both the voice of inner truth and the need to discern what voice we're really listening to, I found that way deeply compelling. And so, long story short, my wife and our kids and I ended up spending 11 years at Pendle Hill. I left community organizing. I went on this rather intense spiritual journey in community, um, a community of radical economic equality, among other things, which had significant impact on my sense of entitlement. It's really something to live for 11 years in a situation where I'm working as Dean of Studies with a PhD from Berkeley, and I'm making the same salary as an 18-year-old who comes to work in the kitchen at Pendle Hill because he or she doesn't know where to go with the rest of their lives, and they need a healthy environment to figure that out. So it was so transformative in so many ways, but centrally and critically around this issue of what is my inner voice of truth telling me, and how do I discern that voice from all the others that are calling to me?